Hi, good day to everyone. Welcome back to our lecture series in General Mathematics. We are now in the lecture series regarding the interest. This is our focus all throughout in the remaining second quarter of our first semester. So before I'm going to start, I would like to introduce to you again my name. I am your teacher, Agi, teaching you your general mathematics subject. Before we're going to start, please click the subscribe button and the notification bell so that should there be a newly posted lesson, you will always be notified. Let's begin. So, our focus will be on simple and compound interest. This is the way we will understand the lesson. I will present with my slide. And after reading the statement on my slide, I will give a little input, or shall we say explanation. So to understand the simple and compound interest, there are things that we should know or we should understand. These are the definition of terms. So the very number one definition of terms that we are going to discuss is what we call now the lender or creditor. So when we say lender or creditor, it is a person or institution who invests the money or make the fund available. So meaning, he is the person or any institution, company, corporation, establishments, partnership, or it include also the cooperative. So when we say institution, who gave money to someone or to someone who is in need. And at the end of the contract, the lender or creditor will expect the money to earn, okay, an interest. Now, who is that someone who borrows money? He is called to be now the borrower or debtor. So when we say borrower or debtor, this is a person, again, or institution who owes the money to someone or avails the money or a fund from the lender or creditor. Meaning to say, the borrower speaks of the person who uses the money taken from the creditor or lender. And at the end of the period of the contract or loan, meaning to say this borrower will also pay the principal amount of the loan, and at the same time, he will be paying the interest earned within that given time of the loan or period of the loan. Now, because we are talking of time, now we have another term in here which is the loan date. Now, what do we mean when we say loan date? So this is the date on which the amount is received by the borrower. Meaning to say, when we are talking of borrowings of any amount, one of the element that we need to understand is the date that the borrower receives the amount, or the lender gave his money to the borrower. So that is called to be the loan date. Okay, it is actually the start of the loan. Okay, another term to be understood is the maturity date. When we say maturity date, it is actually the date on which the money borrowed or loaned to be completely paid. Meaning, it is the end of the contract of loan. Meaning to say, it is actually the date wherein uh, the borrower or the debtor has to pay the loan borrowed or lent to him. Okay? So it is the end of the contract of loan. So that is the maturity date. The next one would be period, and period or time or term. So when we say time, period, or term, we are talking of the same. It is actually the amount of time in years the money is borrowed or invested, or it is actually the length of time between the origin and the maturity date. Meaning to say, this is the length of the contract of loan. So when we say time, term, or period, it is an amount of time in years the money is borrowed or invested. Or in another term, it is actually the length of time between the origin and the maturity date, or the loan date and the maturity date. Meaning to say, it is the start of the loan to the end of the loan. It is the time when the borrower received the money until the time the borrower shall or must have to completely pay the loan. So that is the period. It is actually the length of time. Another term to be understood is the principal. So when we say principal, this is actually the money borrowed or invested. Okay? It is actually an amount borrowed or invested by the lender to the creditor, to the borrower, I should say. Okay? So principal, it is actually the amount received by the borrower during the loan date. Another one is the rate. So what do we mean when we say rate? The rate is actually the percent charged by the lender to the uh, borrower, or it is the rate of increase of the investment. Now another one is interest. So when we say interest, it is actually the amount or earned amount for the use of the money. It is the amount paid for the use of the principal amount. Meaning to say, this is amount to be returned by the borrower on top of the principal. On top of the principal. Okay? So that is interest. Or when we say interest, interest is the amount in payment of the time you use the principal amount you borrowed from the lender. Okay? So that is the interest. The next thing that we are going to discuss is the idea of simple interest. What is a simple interest? It says in here that when we say simple interest, the interest will only be computed on the principal amount only. And then you add that interest to that principal amount. And that is the end of the computation. So again, the source of the interest in the simple interest is only from the principal amount of the loan. Okay? So that is the meaning of simple interest. Another one to be understand is the compound interest. When we say compound interest, it is computed on the principal and also the previously accumulated earned interest. Okay? So meaning to say, when we are going to compute for the compound interest of any loan, meaning the very first one, you compute the interest from the principal amount, and if there is a succeeding computation of the interest, you add the accumulated interest to the principal, and that will be the new principal of the next computation. To further understand the compound interest, let's try to have an illustration. Shall we say you loan 1,000 pesos from a lending institution, and that lending institution charge you with 10%. compounded annually, and that will be paid for at least 2 years. So how is the computation? In the first year of computation of the interest, you just multiply the principal and the interest. And so the interest would be 1,000 multiplied by 10%, so it will give you 100 pesos. So that is the first computation in the first year of the loan. So what would be the final amount after 1 year? So the final amount after 1 year would be 1,100 pesos. But because the loan is for 2 years, meaning to say there is the next computation, there is the second computation, and so after 2 years, you will be computing the interest of that loan. Your principal now will no longer be 1,000. It will already be the first accumulated interest plus the principal, which is 1,100. So what would be the interest after the second year? The interest will be 1,100 multiplied by 10%. So to solve for that, you multiply 1,100 multiplied by 10%. Okay? So the result would be 110 pesos. 110 pesos. The question is, what would be now the uh, final amount after 2 years? So the final amount after 2 years would be, that is the same as saying, the new principal, which is 1,100 plus the interest for the second year, which is 110 pesos. So it will give you a final amount of 1,210. And so that is how to compute the compound interest. Again, you will notice that when we are talking of the compound interest, the interest will earn an interest. Okay? The interest will earn an interest. Now, what about if we go back with the first kind of interest, simple interest? We have the same problem that you loan 1,000 pesos payable in 2 years. The lending institution will charge you 10%. So that is to be paid after 2 years. That is the same as saying the principal amount multiplied by the given interest, which is the same as 100. Okay? And so after computation in the first year, you will compute again for the interest in the second year. Again, when you are going to compute for the interest, that is the same. You compute the interest by saying 1,000 multiplied by 10%. So it will give you again 100. So what would be the final amount after 2 years? That is the same as 1,200. What would be the final amount after 1 year? 1,100. So which is better if you are the lending institution? So you have to make use of the compound interest. At least you will be earning more than using the simple interest. So what is the difference? There would be a difference of 10 pesos. Okay? So that is the compound and simple interest. Now what about the term maturity value or future amount? What do we mean when we say future amount or maturity value? When we talk of maturity value, this is the final amount after the period of loan. So, using the same example, after 2 years, what would be the final amount using the compound interest? That is the same as 1,210, and that is the future amount Okay, what about the future amount when we are going to use the simple interest using the same problem? Again, the final amount would be 1,200. So that is the meaning of the maturity value or future amount. Now let's try to consider a problem applying the simple and compound interest. So we have in here the application of interest before we're going to solve for this problem. I would like you, my student, to please uh, pause first and at least get your own calculator and follow how this problem is being solved. Okay, so it says in here in the problem, Mr. Forsyth received 10,000 pesos from his parents as a prize for garnering a grade of 95 in general mathematics. He plans to invest it for 5 years. A friend heroism of Prudence Savings and Investment Bank, who is their neighbor, heard about this plan and encouraged him to invest in the Prudence Savings and Investment Bank that offers 2% simple interest per year. Another classmate already who is working in the Candor Investment Bank encouraged him to invest in Candor Investment Bank that offers 2% compounded annually. If you were Mr. Forsyth, which will you choose and why? Or what bank will you choose and why? Okay, so that is the problem. To analyze what really investment institution you will be choosing in placing your money, you have to analyze a problem and make at least a computation. Okay, so let's try to have the computation using the simple and compound interest. So we'll be comparing them, and after computation we'll select what is the best for you to uh, earn. Okay, so in the simple interest using the problem, you have to identify the given. The given is 10,000 pesos. The period of loan is 5 years, and of course the rate of interest is 2%. So to solve for the simple interest, you have to bear in mind my notation. If I will be making use of this one, I subscript S. That is, I'm talking of the simple interest. So the interest will always be represented by the capital I. But there is the subscript that I'm using in here. If I make use of the subscript S, I'm talking of the simple interest. If I will make use of the C as my subscript, I'm talking of the compound interest. So what is the simple interest of the given problem? Using the uh, 2% as the rate. So how will we compute this one? So when we compute this one, we can compute it by having the PRT, which is our working equation. So interest is equal to principal multiplied by rate multiplied by the given period of time. Now what about for the compound interest? So how do we solve for the compound interest? So using the same problem, so I have in here the principal 10,000 pesos. Period of the loan 5 years. The rate of interest is still 2%. The next problem would be what is the compound interest of the 10,000 pesos? What are we going to make use? What is our working equation for the compound interest? So to get the compound interest, that is the same as saying I is equal to future amount minus the principal. So of course, we cannot get the future amount if we will not compute the future amount. So what would be our working equation for the future amount? Our working equation for the future amount would be Future amount is equal to principal multiplied by 1 plus the rate. Again, the compound interest is computed by having the difference of final amount minus principal. But in here, you cannot compute the interest if you do not have already the future amount. So what would be our future amount? The future amount would be uh, principal multiplied by the quantity 1 plus rate close parenthesis with an exponent of the t, which is the time. So that would be our working equations in the compound interest. In the Prudence Savings and Investment Bank, simple interest with the annual rate, we are going to have this computation. So 10,000, okay? We have in here 10,000 multiplied by 2% multiplied by 5 years. So that is the simple interest, or 10,000 multiplied by 0.02 multiplied by 5, which is 5 years. Now what would be the result? It will give you a total interest of 1,000 pesos. Okay? It will give you a total interest of 1,000 pesos. That is the interest for 5 years. Okay? And the final amount or maturity value of the investment of 10,000 pesos in the Prudence Savings and Investment Bank would be 10,000 plus 1,000 is equivalent to 11,000 pesos. Now, if you would like to compute the simple interest of the problem yearly, now we have in here the computation yearly. So 10,000 pesos multiplied by 2%, of course multiplied by 1 year. So it will give you 200. In the second year, the same as what we have said in the meaning, as what we have understand in the meaning of simple interest. You just multiply, you just multiply the principal amount, which is 10,000 multiplied by 2%. Still, it will give you 200. Okay. In the third year, the same. 10,000 multiplied by 2%, it will give you 200. Fourth year, 10,000 multiplied by 2% is equal to 200. In the fifth year, fifth year, 10,000 multiplied by 2%, it will give you 200. Now you will notice the accumulated interest is 1,000. So to get now the final amount after 5 years, 1,000 plus the principal, which is 10,000, it will give you 11,000. And that is the investment of 10,000 when you will be investing your money in the Prudence Savings and Investment Bank. Okay. So what about the next computation using the compound interest? Okay. In the Candor Investment Bank, the computation is compound interest. So how do we compute for the compound interest? So we have in here the final amount, or final amount. The final amount would be 10,000 multiplied by the quantity 1 plus the given rate, which is 0.02 raised to the fifth power. Okay, raised to the fifth power. So what would be the final amount? The final amount would be 11,040 pesos and 81 centavos, and that would be the final amount after 5 years. The interest will be final amount minus the principal. So what is your final amount? 11,000 pesos plus 40 pesos and 81 cents minus 10,000. So the interest after 5 years would be 1,040 pesos and 81 cents. Now if you would like to have the detailed computation of the uh, investment in the first year, that is initially, you just multiply the principal multiplied by 2% and it will give you that is the same as 200. Now we have said that when we are talking of compound interest, the interest will earn an interest. So in the second year, your new principal will already be 10,200 pesos. Okay? So that would be your new principal. And so what would be the interest after 2 years? So the interest after 2 years would be 10,200 multiplied by 2%. Okay, multiplied by 2% and it will give you that is the same as 204 pesos. Now, again, do not forget the meaning of compound interest, that an interest will earn an interest. So in the third year of computation, what would be the interest after 3 years? So you will notice the interest would be 208. Why 208, not 204 or 200? It is because your new principal in the third year will already be uh, 10,404 pesos. Okay? Now, if you will also, if you will be computing again for the fourth tier of the investment, you add this 208 pesos to the 200 to the 10,404 pesos as your new principal in the fourth year. So it will give you 10,612 pesos and 8 centavos. Okay? Again, multiply this with your given rate of interest, that is 2%. It will give you 212 and 24 cents. So that is the interest in the fourth year. So again, our investment is after 5 years. So your new principal again will be the sum of the principal in the fourth year plus its interest, which is 212.24. So it will give you now a new principal in the fifth year of computation, that is 10,000 pesos and 824.32 pesos. Okay, it will give you now an interest of 216.49. Now, what would be now the interest after 5 years? So you just add the yearly interest of your computation or yearly interest of your investment. So it will give you 1,040 pesos and 81 centavos. And so what would be the final amount after 5 years? You just add it with the principal, that will give you 11,040 pesos and 81 centavos. Okay? So that is the compound interest. Now, can you answer now the question in the problem? Yes, of course. By having the comparison of the computation. So, if you were Mr. Forsyth, which will you choose and why? Okay, of course, having this two different computation under the Prudence Savings and Investment Bank and Candor Investment Bank, I will choose the Candor Investment Bank. Why? Because it yields more earning in the investment. It gives you more earning. Whereas in the Prudence, it is lesser in the interest. Okay, it is lesser in the interest. So that is the comparison of two computations using simple interest and compound interest. To make conclusion of what we discuss, we have to remember the meaning of simple interest. So that when we say simple interest, the interest will only be coming from the interest of the principal amount. Whereas when we are talking of the compound interest, the interest will be coming from the principal and the accumulated interest. Okay, so that is the difference. Another one would be the working equation. The working equation for the simple interest is the PRT. And what would be the final amount under the simple interest? Principal plus the interest, or principal plus the result of the PRT, or principal, rate, and time. Now, what about the working equation for the compound interest? The working equation for the compound interest is equivalent to the difference of final amount minus the principal. Now, what about the final amount of the compound interest? The final amount of the compound interest is equivalent to the result of principal multiplied by the quantity 1 plus the given rate, and of course raised to the given number of years or period. Okay, so that would be the working equation for the uh, simple interest and compound interest. Of course, the next question is what kind of interest will yield more earnings? Of course, it will always be the compound interest. So that is our discussion in the interest. Once again, before you're going to leave this discussion, may I invite you again to subscribe this channel and click the notification bell so that should there be a new lesson posted, you will always be reminded. Thank you and see you in the next discussion.